Hi everyone, I'm Stephanie Weaver. I'm an author and a health and wellness coach. I'm the author of this book, The Migraine Relief Plan, an 8-week transition to better eating, fewer headaches, and optimal health. I want to thank the American Migraine Foundation for having me today on their page. And I'm really excited to talk with you guys about how do we navigate the holiday season when we have a chronic condition like migraine or Meniere's disease or vestibular migraines or any of those fun things that we all deal with. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to be making a recipe that's a slight adaptation from one in my book, and I'll talk about that. They'll be posting the ingredients, very simple ingredients list. It's a cranberry pear sauce. And I'm also going to talk about some strategies that I personally use, and I also talk about on my page and in my book about how to deal with things like holidays or visiting family or going on vacation. So those are some of the things that I'll be talking about today, but feel free to please ask questions as we go along because I'm here to answer your questions and I'm happy to do that as we go along. So we are making this cranberry pear sauce today, and this is a final version. What I did was I split the recipe in half so I could pre-make some of it to show you what it looks like when we're done. And then I'm just going to be showing you how easy it is to make it. So what I like to do is I'm trying to eat as anti-inflammatory as possible. And what that means is reducing as much sugar in my diet as I can. And so this is a completely sugar-free recipe. It just uses the fruit from this Bosc pear and the tart sweetness of the cranberries, and then a tiny bit of the plant-based stevia sweetener. So let me go ahead and briefly talk about the cranberries. So these are fresh cranberries. I got them at Trader Joe's, which all stores have them right now. The one thing I would encourage you to do though is when you take out a package is just make sure that you check all the cranberries, and if you find any that look like that or a little mushy or kind of funky on one side, you want to just set those aside and not cook those. And I did set some of mine aside in the freezer, so I went through my whole bag and made sure that they were all good before I froze them. So the recipe would call for 1 cup of cranberries, fresh cranberries. I mentioned before I'm making a half recipe, so that's why that's a half cup. And then there's 2 pears in the recipe. So this, you can use any kind of pear. Oftentimes this year they're really firm, and that's perfect for this recipe. It'll make it really easy if you have one of these great corers, but you can also just, you don't have to have one. It just makes things a lot easier. So I'm just going to hopefully pull that core right out. Ooh, how pretty was that? And I think I got the whole thing. You can kind of see all those seeds in there. And then all I need to do is just take the peel off. The reason that you do want to peel pears is this skin can be a little bit on the tart side or have some bitter notes. And for a sauce like this, you don't want that in there. So that just makes it a little bit easier. So you can see how nice and easily this very firm pear is peeling. I'm going to go right over that label. And again, if you have any questions, jump in. I also will come back afterwards and ask questions. So if you're not watching this live, I will come and pay attention and answer questions. So just feel free to ask your questions. And so what's the what's the takeaway of the holidays when you have migraines? Well, the thing that I like to think about is how can I live my life as normally as possible, as much as possible without feeling like I'm, missing out on things, and still take care of myself knowing that I'm prone to getting migraine or vertigo attacks. And so this is just kind of big chunks. Doesn't have to be cut up very much because the food processor is going to do all the work. I'm just going to go ahead and throw my peels in this little bowl over here. So yeah, just very roughly chopped, not even chopped, just big chunks. Like I said, this is a super simple recipe. It's 3 ingredients, which I love.
Michaela would like to know if she could substitute sugar for stevia. She'd like to avoid all sweeteners.
Sure. So of course that's absolutely up to you. What I would recommend is a low glycemic sugar, like a coconut sugar, Michaela, because some people don't like the aftertaste of stevia. Some people are sensitive to it. And of course, you could put a little honey in there. It's really up to you. Or you could just try it just with the pear. You'll notice that the ratio is there's not a ton of cranberries compared to pears, and that's because the pears are a lot sweeter and cranberries are really tart. So that's how I got the kind of nice sweetness without adding sugar. But so yeah, but absolutely coconut sugar would be something I'd recommend. And then this is the only noisy part. Just going to pulse this down. And you know, if you want it really super fine, you can keep going. Or I like my sauce a little bit chunky. So that's pretty much where I'm going to leave it. So you've cut up all the, cut up all the cranberries, the pears are chopped up, and the stevia's just blended in there. And then this just goes into the saucepan. And I guess I can walk over there and do it, but real basic, real simple. It's just going to go on medium heat. Put the lid on for, and then once it comes to a boil, turn it down so it's just simmering, and it cooked for about 25 minutes. I'm going to add 1 pinch of cloves, and I'll show you that in just 1 second. Okay, so that's what it looks like going in the pan. Real simple. And then the pinch of cloves.
And there's nothing in that pan
Well, yeah, just the residue from the previous batch. So they do sell really fun little measuring spoons that are an actual, pinch and a dash, which I think this is a 1/16 of a teaspoon. But you can also just do it with your fingers. And the cloves just add kind of a nice holiday note. So the house smells very clovey. I'm not going to put any more in because it was plenty. And then you just turn this on. You want to bring it to a boil. And then once it does, have the lid on so that that'll capture the moisture in there. And then you just cook it for 20 minutes. So let me, so I'm not going to, I'm going to taste it and kind of talk a little bit more about that. But so that's just kind of how that works. And it's very simple. In the book, it is part of another dish that's a crusted pork chop with sweet potatoes, so it's sort of the side sauce for that. But when I was looking for a holiday recipe to do for today, I thought, oh, this would be a perfect, kind of change for a cranberry sauce. And, I don't think of myself as being on a special diet. This is just how I live. The lifestyle that I've developed to help me deal with my migraine attacks, it's just how I live now. And so I'm used to sort of the things that I've adapted that have really helped me and have made a huge difference. When I was first diagnosed, which was not that long ago, it was only 3.5 years ago, I was having 3 to 5 migraine days a week, and I had a headache every single day. And when I figured out my plan and got on my plan, within about 7 weeks or so, I started feeling a lot better. And now I have 1 to 2 migraine days a month, and I have no daily headache. And my vertigo has been really under control. Lately it's come back a little bit, and we're checking out to see if there's something else that's going on that might be causing that. But that means I feel like I got my life back. So even though I do sometimes still, get migraine attacks, they aren't as severe. They certainly aren't as disabling. And I also feel well because I'm eating whole foods. I'm eating an anti-inflammatory plan, which is helpful for all kinds of other conditions as well. And a lot of people have migraines, have other things going on. They have diabetes, or they have high blood pressure, or they're overweight. And the way this style of eating really helps with all of those things. So feel free to ask questions. The other things I wanted to just talk about are sort of what does, kind of a migraine-friendly lifestyle look like. And so the first thing is keeping a regular schedule. So 7 days a week, I try to go to bed at the same time every night, and I get up at the same time every morning. And, it's kind of a drag in some ways because you'd like to sleep in on the weekends or during the holidays. It might be really tempting to vary that. But what we do know about migraine brains, if there is such a thing, is that they like regularity. And so the more consistent that you can keep yourself, if you happen to be flying across the country, what I do is I start adjusting myself to the new time zone. So I start getting up a little bit earlier the week before, so that when I have to get up early for the airport, and then I'm, living on the East Coast time versus West Coast time, it's not as big of an adjustment. So that's something that's really important, is to try to keep a regular schedule. Also try to keep as consistent as you can with whatever foods you're eating and alcohol, right? Because holiday parties, it's really tempting to have a glass of champagne or to have a couple drinks, or somebody's made a craft cocktail. And it's tough to say no to those things, but I always try to just weigh, how much am I going to pay for this? And can I have just as good a time at this party by having sparkling club soda and enjoying being social with my friends? And for me, personally, alcohol is never worth it because it always gives me a headache. And can make me really sick the next day. But those are things that you as an adult need to weigh, but it's something to sort of think about as you're going along. Kind of look at the month and say, well, how many parties or events do I have coming up? And how many times am I going to be challenged to go off my regular plan? And which of those times do I really want to do that? And which do I not? Because oftentimes it's just sort of an eating fest between now and January 1st. And it's not even that maybe the food's always that good. So just kind of think about which times you want to stray from the plan that works for you, and then enjoy it when you do that. So I try to never, cast any foods as bad foods. It's just sometimes they're helpful choices or unhelpful choices. So that's the second thing, is being consistent with food and alcohol. Now the third thing is that I pretty much always bring food to parties, unless it's just would be weird, like unless it's a catered event or something where I can't do that. If it's a catered event, I often will eat beforehand. And that way I'm not hungry. I can then look and see what's available, and I can decide, maybe a little taste of that would work for me. Maybe I'll enjoy a little taste of dessert. And but if I'm going to a potluck, which a lot of times things are, I will just check in with the host or hostess and say, what are you guys making? And then I will make, if they're doing a theme or something, then I'll make something that I know I can eat. And that way I can enjoy having a plate of food, but I don't have to, feel like, oh man, there's nothing there for me. So that's the third thing, is bring food. Then the fourth thing is, if you're aware that light or sound can be triggers for you, if it's very bright, if it's a party with strobe lights, for example, or a concert, or it's going to be very loud. Sometimes restaurants are really loud. Those can often be triggers for us. So it's just something to keep in mind. Like if I know I'm going somewhere loud, I will pack a pair of earplugs. Nobody has to know I'm wearing them. I can still hear conversations, but it really helps sort of reduce the stimuli. And then I'll find a quiet corner to talk to one or two people, and that helps me still. I'm out, I'm being social, but I'm also taking care of myself in the meantime. And then the fifth thing that I wanted to talk about was try to decide what's important to you about the holiday season, and then skip the other stuff. You don't have to go to everything you're invited to. You don't have to, bring food to every single thing you're invited to. Figure out, I was on another group of women that kind of support each other, women writers, and somebody was saying, I really just want to have Christmas with my husband and my son, because pretty soon he's not going to be home with us. And, my family really stresses me out. And is it okay for me to skip being with my family on Christmas Day? And everybody chimed in and said, yes, do what makes you happy. If you have a stressful family, and kind of everybody does in some way or other, you're lucky if you don't. Sometimes I do a lot better just one-on-one with family members, or seeing them at times other than the holidays. And just really enjoying the time, whatever is sort of special for you. Maybe it's tree trimming, maybe it's a special Hanukkah dinner, maybe it's a special Kwanzaa celebration. Whatever your faith is and whatever your holiday traditions are, just try to keep that in mind. I was just saying to my husband, who's manning the camera today, that one of my favorite Christmas Eve memories is he and I just taking a random walk through the neighborhood with our dog a couple years ago. And it was Christmas Eve, and it was super quiet because everybody was gone. There was a restaurant that was open, and we just sat outside and we had dinner because it was just warm enough to do that. And it was just magical. It was beautiful, and it was completely unplanned. And we can't ever recapture that because that restaurant isn't even open anymore. But you never know when those sort of special memories are going to happen. So what I would just encourage you guys to take care of yourselves over the holidays. It's been a stressful year if you're paying any attention to the news, and there's a lot going on. So just do your best to take care of yourself. Decide the things that are important to you. Keep as regular a schedule as you can. Consistent with food and alcohol. Bring food if you want to parties. And then just pay attention to things that might be a challenge with light or sound sensitivity. So those are my tips for enjoying the holidays. And I'm going to taste this cranberry pear sauce before we leaf. So you can see that the texture is kind of like a chunky applesauce, which is kind of how I like my cranberry sauce. And it is, I would say, lightly sweet. There is a nice tartness from the cranberries, but it's not overpoweringly tart. The cloves are very subtle, but it definitely has that sort of holiday feel with the cloves. I definitely wouldn't add any more cloves to it. And it's super simple. It's 20 minutes on the stove, 3 ingredients. So that's the kind of food I like to make. But invite you, if you haven't checked out my book, to please do. It's a migraine relief plan. You could buy it at local bookstores and online. I'll just hold it up real quick. And I want to thank the American Migraine Foundation for having me today. I'm a health and wellness coach. I love to support other people who are walking this path with me with migraines and Meniere's disease and vestibular migraine. And I want to thank you so much. I hope you guys have a really wonderful rest of your year and that your new year also starts out really well. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll hope to see you guys again soon. Bye.